Good morning, and welcome to another week of Journey with Christ. I'm your host, Mark Mitchell, preaching minister at the Park Avenue Church of Christ here in Charleston, West Virginia. And I'm joined, as always, by Steve Fox, a minister for over 50 years. I'm going back to it, buddy. Hey, you've been a minister for over 50 years. I mean, that's pretty
over
big
50,
accomplishment.
Yeah, and I'm 48 years old. You do the math.
Yeah.
Well, good morning or good afternoon to everybody, depending on when you're watching this series. Before I forget it, we'd like to wish all our British friends a happy 4th of July.
You'd like to do what?
Oh.
Yeah, I don't think...
Don't they have a 4th of July in Britain?
They do. But their celebration is probably more like good riddance celebration.
Well, see, that whole thing started out one-sided anyway. Because Washington told his troops, we're going to get over there and we're going to hide behind the rocks and hide behind trees and wear green clothing. And you guys are going to put on red and white clothing and march in a straight line. So that was kind of one-sided anyway. Yeah. I'm glad we have July 4th, and I'm sure, I was thinking yesterday when I was walking, isn't that an amazing example? Here were two countries who just hated each other, despised each other, and now, after a series of events, they're best friends, they're best allies. The best ally we got is Britain, and the best one that Britain has is us.
I mean, yeah, you throw in the War of 1812 where it escalated to an unbelievable...
Now, what year was that?
1812. And then, during the 19th century, the 1800s, things began to normalize, and by the time, during the early parts of World War I mean, those kind of events began to
they were back together again.
Yeah, I was trying to come up with they were firm in their commitment to one another. Mm-hmm. And so,
have been ever since.
Have been ever since.
So whether you live in England or whether you live in the United States, happy July the 4th. Hope you had a good time, hope you didn't eat too much, and hope your fireworks were everything that you wanted them to be.
Yes. Absolutely. I'm still wearing red, white, and blue, so.
That's good. As long as we don't have to salute.
Yeah, and for those who have to look at my legs, I apologize, but it's hot outside.
Yeah, and that's two more good reasons to wear long pants, I tell you. Just trust me on that one if you can't see very far.
Okay. As we continue in love here in Matthew chapter 20. As Steve told us last week, we were going to be working on studying the parable of the workers in the vineyard. Matthew chapter 20, verse 1.
Before you read that for us, I would like to make one comment. Remember, we've talked over and over in this series, find out or figure out who you are in the parable. Mm-hmm. Some of them you have to guess that. This one you do not have to guess that. When we get to the last two verses, it just cracks me up every time I read it. But we don't have to guess at this one. And
okay.
You can, since you're such a good reader, you can read the whole thing.
All right. For the kingdom of heaven is like a landowner who went out early in the morning to hire workers for his vineyard. He agreed to pay them a denarii for the day and sent them into his vineyard. About 9 in the morning he went out and saw others standing in the marketplace doing nothing. He told them, "You also go and work in my vineyard, and I will pay you whatever is right." So they went. He went out again about noon and about 3 in the afternoon and did the same thing. About 5 in the afternoon he went out and found still others standing around. He asked them, "Why have you been standing here all day long doing nothing?" "Because no one has hired us," they answered. He said to them, "You also go and work in my vineyard." When evening came, the owner of the vineyard said to his foreman, "Call the workers and pay them their wages, beginning with the last ones hired and going on to the first." The workers who were hired about 5 in the afternoon came and each received a denarii. So when those came who were hired first, they expected to receive more. But each of them also received a denarius. When they received it, they began to grumble against the landowner. Those who were hired last worked only 1 hour, they said, and you have made them equal to us who have borne the burden of the work and the heat of the day. But he answered one of them, I'm not being unfair to you, friend. Didn't you agree to work for a denarius? Take your pay and go. I want to give the one who was hired last the same as I gave you. Don't I have the right to do what I want with my own money? Or are you envious because I'm generous? So the last will be first, and the first will be last.
That's a pretty good parable, isn't it?
It is a very interesting parable.
And there are lots of things in there. We're going to look at the details of what's in chapter 20 when Jesus told this parable about the laborers in the vineyard. But
the one thing, first of all, that I like, that Matthew seems to do more than everyone, is he quotes Jesus in the beginning as, for the kingdom of heaven is like.
If you go through Matthew and look at the parables, that word kingdom is going to jump out at you over and over and over again.
And it's, which for me gives context as to why it's still just as relevant to today, because his kingdom is still ongoing.
Exactly. And you've got, as you work through Matthew and you look at the parables, one of the things that just jumps out at you is how many times Jesus talks about judgment. Well, when you get to the end of Jesus' parables in Matthew, it's the story of the wedding feast where they invite everybody to come to the wedding feast, and a bunch of people don't come.
Yeah.
And so Jesus says, the master says, go out and invite anybody you want to. Everybody is welcome. Everybody's invited to be a part of this kingdom.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the last parable we told in Matthew. I don't think that's a coincidence. I think that's how he's putting it together from the front to the end.
Yeah, I think he's bookending his parables and using them to illustrate the significance of what Matthew is actually recounting of in his, and through the Spirit, using illustrations that Jesus used to better teach us. And again, this is, for me, is a big deal. When
you can still ask, who am I in the parable?
You can still ask, who am I in the parable? But the point is this: the parable illustrates what should be going on today, as Matthew states it. For the kingdom of heaven is like.
Yes. And you see that over and over. It's repeated over and over. Let me mention two things before we start looking at the details. When I read this, I think of the immigrants that are in our country. I've been to Nashville lots of times, more times than I've ever been to any other city. And there are a lot of people from immigration who have settled down in Nashville, either legally or illegally. And like on some of the stores, like Lowe's and Sam's and other places like that, they even have designated places where it says, basically the sign says, if you want to work, you be here at 5:30 in the morning. Or you be here at 6 o'clock in the morning, and we got a job for you. And
in Myrtle Beach, we had the same
thing.
There was a certain place where the day workers would congregate. And if you were, and I was a contractor down there, and there was a few times where if I was doing something and I was short a man or two, we had equipment rented, we were having concrete poured or whatever it may be, we might need a couple people, so I would go and find those guys, and generally I told them, hey, look, this is what I got going on, and this is what I'm willing to pay you.
And this is how many hours you're going to be here.
Yeah, so, I'll have you back by whatever time.
How deep you want that hole, and what time's lunch?
Yeah.
But it's amazing to me that you've got all, and they even have in the parking lots of those big companies, they even have a designated area where if you want to work that day,
Yep.
you can go to that specific place. Now the other thing I wanted to mention is a little more important than what we were just talking about there, but I can't tell you how many sermons or Bible classes I've been in where I've heard this translated or interpreted as, well, when we get to heaven, there are going to be some people who worked a whole lot and get their reward, and then there are going to be some people who just scraped in by the skin of their teeth, and the first group's going to be upset with the second group because they worked just as hard and even longer in the heat and in the sun, and the owner gave the little guys the same amount of money as he gave the ones that worked all day. And I'm thinking, in heaven, am I going to be walking around going, oh, why is he here? I can't believe in heaven there's not going to be any bickering back and forth about who's there and who's not there.
Yeah, that's pretty,
So
to me, that's
not,
very
number
foolish
one, that's
theology.
not what the parable means.
It is not.
No.
It is not. By very, God, as the parable ends with, it's God's kingdom.
Mm-hmm.
He can do with it as he
Yeah.
wishes.
Yep.
All right. Well,
So who's the householder? But you're right, it starts with the kingdom again.
it starts with the kingdom.
Who's the householder?
God, Jesus. I mean, it's the kingdom of God. It's His land, His vineyard.
And he's got people working for him. He's hired some laborers for his
Day
vineyard.
laborers. Yep. And
It's hot. You can just tell. It's hot.
well, grapes generally come in because I have grapes, and grapes come in during the heat. And generally, my grapes come in around in August, and so, and as we all know, it's hot in August. I mean, it's just dog day hot in August. So, yeah.
When Susie and I go to Nicaragua and stay with our host family, they have a little porch on the back of their house. What's the when you pour concrete and there's something bars, those rebar. They have a couple of rebars on their roof. That's their roof. They don't have any.
Yeah, you told me it was vines and
the grapes just hang down right there, and we can sit in those rocking chairs and reach up and sheesh. I really feel sorry for those people that every night they have to go out there and sit in a rocking chair and eat grapes off their vines. But and down there it's 80 at night.
Yeah,
so it's hot too.
yeah, it's extremely hot. So yeah, we have these guys. They're all. Landowner goes out, gets his early, gets his workers, and would have probably been at dawn. You know, because any man who wanted to work, who was out there early, knew that he had a good probability of being the first one out there to get a job.
Mm-hmm. And he's going to fill up the truck and leave. And then
That's right.
Some more people might come. The footnote in the RSV, the real Bible, says that a denarius was worth 20 cents. So these guys are going to work all day in the heat for 20 cents.
Yeah.
I tell you what, if you're out in the middle of a field somewhere and you're working all day and there's produce to be gotten, if you're out there all day in the heat, God can call you to preach.
I thought denarius represented a day's wage.
Well, it could be a day's wage, which was 20 cents.
Which would, today, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But it was, yeah, it wasn't a lot, but it was something agreed upon, and their choice.
If you ever worked a day like this, these days go pretty slow. If you're out there in the middle of a field and there's heat and you're working with your hands, and
I don't think there's anything harder than picking anything out of the garden. I think that is some of the hardest work to do, because there's no brain activity whatsoever. It's purely just reach down. Well, I mean, it's
you were talking about both of us, or just?
Well, I'm just saying, like, if you're doing jobs that where your mind's engaged, and like many times
So what's
I'd be
the
doing
word
hard
we're
work.
looking for? It's routine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so routine, you don't have to think about it. And that to me makes it I've watched the guys that work at the hold the flag stop and slow. I'm thinking, that has to be the longest day to work.
And in one of those jobs, it's very, very common for human beings to go, okay, it was 12 noon there. Oh, it's 12:03 now.
Yeah.
When I worked for a construction company when I was in high school and college, I didn't wear a watch. Because I knew if I wore a watch, I'd keep looking at it every once in a while, and it'd just be 3 minutes past what it was before.
Yeah. You'd be like, oh my goodness, this is the longest day of my life.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's not.
And then you get to go home and sleep and start all over again.
And of course, we have the homeowner, landowner going out every so often picking up more workers. Without discussion of day's wage, but he tells them, I will treat you fair.
He just asked him, why are you standing here?
Yeah.
Well, the truck already went by.
Yeah, you missed
That's
it.
in the NIV. The truck already went by and you missed it. You're going to have to wait around for a little bit longer. And he does, and Matthew says he does this at the first hour, the 6th hour, the 11th hour. He's going around periodically to see if there's more guys that want to work.
Yeah. And of course, the exchange on the last group, he asked them, why have you been standing here all day long doing nothing? And he says, because no one has hired us. He said to them, you also go and work in my vineyard.
If somebody come by, I'd gladly get up on top of your chariot and ride with you somewhere.
Yeah.
Or a wagon, whatever they're traveling.
But the inclination here is Jesus' statement to him says, you've been here all day long doing nothing. Maybe, just maybe, we don't know this for sure, but they were there, and some of the other times Jesus was there, but they were just off to the side sitting, not doing nothing, not willing to step out. Now Jesus says to them, why have you been standing here all day doing nothing?
And if you've ever had a teenager in your house,
Yes.
well, Dad, I can't find a job. Well, you're not going to find a job laying on a couch.
Yeah, it's not going to happen with your butt still attached to the chair.
But I really can't find a job. I've looked and looked and looked, and I can't find a job. So when he gets all these guys together, you know that the ones that were there last are saying, oh, good, they got 20 cents. We're going to get 5 times that or 10 times that.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
And by the way, if my 3 children listen to this, and they won't, but if my 3 children hear this, I never had to say, get off the couch and go find a job. All 3 of them did very, very well in that area growing up in our house.
The fastest I've ever moved in my life is when I was laying on the couch. I hear my dad's truck pull down the road into the driveway, and I'm jumping up, trying to get out the back door to make sure that I get everything done that I needed to get done, because my butt was...
Did you level out the couch, make sure there weren't any
Well, he could have
wrinkles
put his
in it?
hand on it and felt, well, this thing's warm.
It's warm.
But, that's human nature, and I'll be honest with you, I don't think being a hard worker necessarily comes natural. It's something that you train your body to do, and you train your mind to say, hey, I got to do this.
One of the things as I was growing up that I was always worried about is, does my dad or mom think I'm lazy? I did not want them to think I was lazy. And so, a lot of people, that's the way they determine what they do in life.
Yeah.
Some people are looking for a job where they get paid big bucks and don't do anything.
Yeah.
I could not take that if that never happened to me, but I know some people that have done that.
Yep.
So when he asked him, why aren't you guys working? He said, nobody's hired us.
Nobody. Yeah.
Let's give him the benefit of the doubt.
You can give him the benefit of the doubt, but Jesus calls him on it, right?
Yeah,
From the, why you been here all day doing nothing? And then he goes, well, go and work in my vineyard. And when evening came, the owner of the vineyard said to his foreman, call the workers and pay them their wages, beginning with the last ones hired and going on to the first. I can just see, every time I read this and in my study of the parable, I'm thinking of the long line going into heaven, kind of like, okay, we're getting ready to step in. But I mean, because in a roundabout way, this is similar to it. Mm-hmm. Though, again, I bring up the point, this is about the kingdom of heaven, Are you in line?
Yeah.
Are you in line? Did you accept the invitation to come work? To come be a part of this?
To be hired.
To be hired.
Yeah.
To be used. And there's always a sense, I don't know why human nature is to this degree, the way we are, but we always pay attention to what the other person has, and they either, I deserve more than some of them, and so I expect it. It is so telling of human nature.
My grandpa had a saying he used every once in a while talking about somebody. He'd say, that guy wouldn't be happy if he worked in a pie factory.
Yeah.
If you were there eating all day, eating pies all day, you'd probably
still be happy.
You'd be 500 pounds, but you'd still be happy. So these guys may have been offered a job and said, I don't want to do that, which is everybody's right. You can say I don't want to do that,
or the freedom to be lazy.
Or I don't want to do that because it doesn't pay enough.
Yeah.
There are all kinds of questions, but these guys said nobody's hired us.
Yeah.
So we'll give them the benefit of the doubt and say that's what happened. So what were they expecting, Mark? Tell us what they were expecting.
They were expecting to be paid, I forget.
They got a denarius a day.
Denarius a day. And when they saw that the guys that came in at 5 o'clock, who probably worked maybe 2 to 3 hours tops.
Well, I don't know how you say this in Hebrew, but what they said was, hey!
Hey! Well, they saw that they got the full day's wage, and they just thought to themselves, well, hey, we're going to get more than a full day's wage.
Yeah.
I can't wait to go home and show my family, look what I earned today. And it doesn't go that way.
Nope. And I like what the master says, I'm a man of generosity. So why are you upset with me? Why do you begrudge the fact that I'm a man of generosity?
See, this goes back to a statement you said a couple weeks ago as we were doing the prodigal son story. Our conception of grace and mercy is very limited because we always use a humanistic view that pertains to something that is purely a heavenly concept.
Yeah, and you know what caused that? Well, one of the things that caused was what we said at the beginning, that people actually believe these are people who are jealous. They're both sets are in heaven and they're jealous because the one group's not supposed to be there and the other group says they deserve it.
Yeah.
And that's just bad theology.
Yeah, it's almost worse than that because I sure don't want to give an account for that theology.
So the owner says, I'm good, and you should not be talking about the fact that you see my goodness in a different way. I'm generous. I've done what I should have done. I don't have any questions about that. And then he says, ending the parable, the last will be first, and the first will be last.
That is a statement that actually is in several of his discussion parables. And for me, it has been a reminder of my place in the line.
Yeah.
You know.
And in contrast to the way human beings look at it, the last will be first, and the first is last. That's human nature. That's human thinking. I want to be up front, like you
I want to be
said.
the first one. You know,
I don't want to be last. I don't want to be last. Well, I'll tell you what. If
giving away ice cream, where are you headed? There's 50 kids and they got a gallon of ice cream. What are you going to do? You're going to get to the front of the line.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But where as followers of Jesus Christ, no, I'm sorry, you go right ahead. I'm good.
Yeah.
If there's any left, I'm good. You know.
And he's saying that when we do that, we climb up the ladder by climbing back down the ladder. We're not worried about stepping on other people. Okay, I got to get to the top, so if I have to step on people on the way up there, that's just too bad. He's saying even in this adventure, the last will be first and the first will be last. If you live that way, he will reward you and give you exactly what you deserve from working all day in the vineyard.
That's right. And it's, I mean, that illustration is used as the time that he talks to him about don't take the seats of honor at a table.
Mm-hmm.
You know, do not try to, in various ways, bribe people to accept you and not accept you. I mean, there's this understanding. In fact, Jesus, when he goes in John chapter 13 and 14, and that his discourse at the Last Supper, when he bends down, takes off his outer cloak, and washes their feet, he says, I have taken the place of a servant, and I am a king. Go and do likewise.
Yeah.
You know, that's
One of the greatest things in life is when you see people who have that kind of generosity and fame and being a celebrity, who doesn't act like that.
Oh.
Who doesn't
They're
act
a
like
breath of fresh air.
Everybody else is scum, and I can walk over whoever I want to, step over whoever I want to. When you see people that have that kind of celebrity about their lives, and they're still helping other people that are, need some other things,
Mm-hmm.
that's well, Jesus says on several occasions that's one of the most beautiful things there is.
Yeah. Nothing is, I think, more revealing about the character of someone is when you watch them interact with a group of people and where they place themselves inside that dynamic.
When I slipped this piece of paper in my Bible this morning, I never dreamed we were going to be talking about this. Let me quote Abraham Lincoln. A man is the tallest when he stoops down to help a child.
That's right.
That was a guy who's 6'6" who wrote that.
Well, even Paul, to me, recently I had conversation, a little bit of dealings with a man who had on his hand a bracelet that said, I am second. Well, I knew there were several connotations that could have been used for, and the most biblical reason of I am second is really in a family in a husband and wife relationship. Mm-hmm. And I asked him, I said, is that what that means? And he says, no. He said, that means God's the head of my life. Well, and I know that it has become, in a roundabout way, a very popular theological thought process. But if you take Paul's understanding of what Jesus was teaching, and you go to Philippians chapter 2, Paul says, no. He said by Jesus' example, he said he made himself last. He put others above himself. I know that the scriptures read, do unto others you would have them do unto you. And that's a great context. But if you want to get right down to it, what did Jesus do? What would Jesus do? He made himself last.
Yeah, if I walked into a restaurant and I knew I had written 13 of the New Testament letters, I'd probably think I was pretty important.
Yeah.
As most people would.
Absolutely.
In I lost count years and years ago in these 50 years of marrying people. I think it's up to like 350. I've performed the ceremony of over 350 couples. And I'll be at the mall or something, and a guy just come up to me and punch me in the mouth. I say, "Oh, I know who you are. I must have married you." No, that hasn't happened, not yet. But in the ceremony, there are lots of times. I've got many, many different ceremonies, but one that I really like is in the vows. They say to each other, "I will promise I will love you more than you deserve." And it always, I get tickled because the response is usually different. Because some groups, some people at the wedding will go, "Oh, well, that doesn't make any sense."
Oh, it makes.
And then other people will go, "That was pretty good." Well, it does make sense, and it's pretty good that I promised to love Susie even more than she deserves, and vice versa. And coming the other way, there was a lot more. When she promised me that she's going to love me more than I deserve. Whew.
Well, David writes in Psalms, I forget which one, it's either 88 or 108 or something of that
That's
nature.
close enough.
That David writes that I am doing better than I deserve. And God, that is a biblical principle, understanding that God is treating me all the time better than I deserve. Even if I'm the last person hired, I'm going to be treated better than I deserved. And in truth, even if in my service I give my life and then someone makes a deathbed confession to accept God, and whatever happens like through that process. I mean, I'm sure there's a few people who looked at the thief on the cross and thought, "Wait a minute, not fair," But we're not getting out in there without grace and mercy anyway.
I think the couple guys that were there on the hill with him that day were saying, "This isn't fair."
This isn't fair.
No.
So, and you're right. If you don't have the first shall be last and the last shall be first in your mindset of your life, you're going to always ask the question or make the statement, "This isn't fair."
And that is such a great characteristic of leadership.
Yep.
When elders are in a church and are saying, we're overseeing the church, we'll take care of this, we'll sit up higher than everybody else is sitting, and we'll take care of this, because, man, you're going to have trouble. You're going to have problems. When a person says, "I am the leader here and I will make all the decisions and I really don't care what the rest of you think."
That's why I always hated those those big massive chairs that were always on the upper area where someone would sit, and you always felt like you were looking at the teacher that had the stern face that was looking back at you like, "Mark, you're having fun. Stop it."
And James, the Apostle James, says, if somebody comes into your assembly and you make them sit in the back because their clothes aren't very nice, but you let other people sit up front,
in the privileged seats,
man alive, you got some things wrong that you need to work on in your life.
Yeah, this is one of my best illustrations.
If somebody wore that shirt to church service, we would want you to sit up front so everybody could see it.
Yeah.
Or maybe not.
One of my favorite illustrations from a guy who wrote a book entitled The Kingdom of God actually turned an island upside down, and as an illustration of the kingdom of God is upside down from everything that we understand of human nature.
Exactly.
And too often we bring human nature tendencies into the kingdom, into the church, into our relationships, and we wonder why everything's a mess. So we're close to the end here. We're about out of time. You got something you're going to turn to?
Well, I was going to, but I won't be able to. This will be our assignment for next week.
Okay.
After you read the end of parables in Matthew, Mark chapter 10 is one of my favorite chapters because everything that's taught in there is what you just said. Jesus has turned everything upside down. Like the Pharisees said, well, this is the only reason. This is the reason you can have her divorce. And Jesus said, well, let me tell you the real reason.
Yeah. Well, Sermon on the Mount
Don't
is
leave
an upside down.
Those little kids over there, get them away from him. And Jesus says, no.
Let him come.
There are 4 or 5 things in Mark 10 where everything that the people are doing, Jesus says that's not the way to look at it.
Yeah, you're looking at it the wrong way. Yeah. And the Sermon on the Mount, from beginning to end, is opposite of everything that we understand.
Yeah.
Well, we're so glad that you joined and tuned in with us this week.
And we hope our British friends will join us again next week.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, do you want to offer up our goodbyes?
For this session, you mean?
Yeah.
Let's see, the goodbyes for this session would be, well, probably everybody's had fun over the July 4th weekend. We all probably ate too much. We all maybe got not nearly as excited about the fireworks as we should. But deep down in our hearts, we all know that we live. And please don't misunderstand me. The United States of America makes a lot of mistakes. And we have done that down through the years. We've gone in and tried to take care of other people's problems, and it led to all kinds of chaos.
Well, the church has made a bunch of mistakes, too.
The church has made 4 or 5. Well, they hired you.
That's right. Well, I'm not.
Oh, wait a minute. But I was here before they hired you.
You know, wait. I think this first shall be last and last shall be first thing.
We missed it.
Too far.
We missed it. Oh, shoot. Anyway, when you go to bed tonight, just think about the fact that we live, and I know other countries believe the same thing, but we live in the greatest country that's ever been established. And we got lots of problems. All you got to do is open a newspaper every night. We got lots of problems.
They still print those?
They won't be printing them very much longer, I tell you. And books. Nobody will know what a book is either. But we are grateful that we live in this country, and we ought to try to share that as much as we can with other people, especially if they live in countries where you get up in the morning, every morning, and you look over your shoulder to try to figure out, is somebody going to shoot me today? Chicago, Los Angeles, some of those cities have that, but not nearly like they have in other countries. So, God bless the USA. And yes, take care of our troops, but I always feel bad saying that because I want God to take care of the troops on the other side too.
That's right.
Mom and dads are sending their kids out into war just like we're sending our kids out into war. Okay, that's the end of my soapbox.
All righty. Well, on behalf of Steve and I, have a great week, and we'll see you next week. Thanks.
Be brave and be kind.
As the mountains surround Jerusalem, so the Lord surrounds his people.